It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. In spite of the removal of Tony Olufe, the Commissioner of Police in Anambra State, and immediately replaced by Echanga Woro Echang as Anambra State new CP, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Muhammadu Yakubu, has raised concerns over the deteriorating security situation in the state, expressing worry over the safety of Inec staff, voters and security personnel during the November 6 governorship election in the state. The Inec boss claims that the situation in the state has deteriorated from what it was the last time a meeting of stakeholders was held on the Anambra election. Yakubu has requested for some 26,000 more staff to be deployed, as well as asking for protection in no fewer than 6,000 locations in the state. He further declared that electoral facilities and materials could become targets of attack during the elections. However, INEC says it is ready to proceed with the Anambra governorship elections as scheduled in November.
Perhaps never before in our history has the importance of election security in a governorship election been this urgent. It is in the light of these recent and seemingly escalating threats that the Commission has convened this emergency meeting. We will continue to work with the security agencies and in consultation with respected opinion leaders in Anambra State and the National Peace Committee to ensure that these hit-and-run attacks do not derail the electoral process. We wish to assure the people of Anambra State that the Commission is determined to proceed with the election as scheduled.
All right. Elections in Anambra. This is happening. Sad.
It is sad, isn't it? But those elections must happen. We have exactly a month to go. Because I'm thinking about 2019, you'll recall that there was legislative elections in Anambra, Rivers, and Lagos that were cancelled in some constituencies because of violence and burning of electoral materials. That must not happen again. I'm seeing it as a good sign that the Commissioner of Police for Anambra State has been replaced. Unfortunately, Commissioner Tony Olufe, he only got to serve less than a month. He was appointed on the 11th of September, and he's already out. But I think that's a good sign that this has been treated with the urgency and the seriousness that is required. That's from the police angle. Also from the army angle, from the military angle, we have that Operation Golden Dawn, which I do hope, and I must stress, that we don't hear of any abuses. Now, INEC is willing to do their part, but all INEC's facilities, all INEC's materials, INEC personnel, especially the human life, must be protected by our security agencies. The political parties as well have their role to play. They really need to tone down the tension, because we don't need people dying. But I worry that even if the elections do go ahead, which I pray that they do, I think it will be such a disaster if they don't. I worry about voter turnout at this point. I'm not sure how safe and how comfortable people will feel coming out. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that regard to assure people that they're safe to exercise their franchise.
Dr. Batsi?
Well, I mean, the situation in Anambra State is precarious, and it's so bad that we have witnessed in that state, in the lead-up to the November 6 scheduled elections, cases of assault on state infrastructure, including at a point government house, including at a point the prisons, including, as we witnessed, a few days ago, assault on the offices of the Department of State Security, the Federal Road Safety Commission, and also the attack, the assassination of the husband of Dr. Dora Akunyele, former minister, former NDLA, NAFDAC boss, and all of this attributed to unknown gunmen. In no instance has the relevant authorities, been able to solve this riddle of unknown gunmen that are running rampage, not just in Anambra State, but also in neighboring states. So that creates a lot of anxiety. And democracy is imperiled, more or less. We don't need the crystal ball to determine the implications of this. Voter turnout, yes, very important. What is the purpose of an election if the voters are not going to come out? Ordinarily, more Nigerians participate in reality TV shows like Big Brother Nigeria rather than elections where they're supposed to make informed choice and determine their own future. In Anambra and other states of the East, every Monday, people are asked to stay at home and not to come out. IPOB continues to deny that it is involved in any way or the other, maybe politically or in any of the incidents that have occurred. So who is involved? So what you are dealing with also in Anambra and elsewhere is the failure of the state, the lack of capacity on the part of the state to provide security for the people. So why should anybody come out to want to vote? And the situation in the lead up to the November 6th elections proposed, gubernatorial elections, is so bad that even some of the candidates have suspended their campaigns. Some of them are campaigning from a long distance. I don't see how you can become governor of a state by correspondence DHL campaign. You know, so that even makes it so difficult. Even the candidates themselves are afraid. There was supposed to be some event, some gubernatorial town hall show, you know, in that same state this week. But many of the will-be candidates who will participate in it, you know, they are a bit, cautious because they don't want to expose themselves to danger. No election should be a do-or-die, you know, proposition, whether it's in Anambra or in any other part of the country. What are the options available? The Independent National Electoral Commission held a meeting at which it expressed concern. The state government, Anambra state government, says, that's led by Willie Obiano, the governor, says that, they are on top of the situation. Yes, the state governments are always on top of nothing, you know, and that they will ensure security. Can anybody trust that they will be able to do so? Ohaneze Ndigbo and some of the candidates are saying that they are ready, and that the election should go ahead. But Inec has an option. It can choose to postpone the election, suspend it, postpone it, to see whether there will be enough time to be able to ensure peace in that environment. And that power exists under Section 180, subsection 3 of the Constitution. But you can only have a maximum of 6 months postponement. But that will also translate into an extension of tenure. But what the Constitution says is that it cannot go beyond 6 months. If it goes beyond 6 months, then of course the Speaker of the State House of Assembly assumes, the leadership of the state. Even all of that could create issues, and even further complicate the system. The federal government can, look at the option of maybe perhaps declaring a state of emergency in parts of the state. But, the last time that was done under the Obasanjo administration, what was pointed out is that you really cannot declare a state of emergency within the purview of the Constitution that derails the prevalent, framework, the constitutional order that is in the state. Well, that's a matter that can be argued in the courts. But in all of this, I think that the people holding the short end of the stick are the people of Anambra State, who have been denied, the opportunity to have peace, to engage with possible candidates, and to go to the polls and elect, the next governor of Anambra State without pressure, without fear, without anxiety. But apparently that's not going to happen. And we hope that this does not become a pattern and that this is not really, fifth columnists having a field day and sabotaging the Nigerian state. Scary.
Dr. Abasi, the scary part is it has become a pattern. Let's not deceive ourselves. Leading up to the last elections, we saw what happened. INEC offices burnt. Infrastructure burnt. So it has become a pattern for our elections. The question is, why is it that we've not been able to find out those perpetrating these acts?
Unknowns.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tuna, Dr. Abati. We'll take a short break now on the morning show. When we return, we'll have Michael, we'll have Adesua, we'll have Aaron, and the entire team right here talk about global business COVID-19 supporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Well, joining us now for global business updates is Michael Wilson from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Morning. It's a pretty choppy week, really. Everything looking towards the non-farm payrolls in the United States on Friday, and there isn't a great deal for the markets to get their teeth into. As far as Asia Pacific's concerned, do remember, of course, that mainland China is closed because of the Golden Week holidays there. Nikkei down about 1%, and they're looking forward to the new new Prime Minister, Mr. Kishida, in Tokyo, on the expectation of more public spending, more infrastructure spending. Well, they may well get that, but also there's a proposal to hike income tax rates as well for higher earners. So that's not going down very well there. It's a bit like China's shared prosperity movement, really, but we'll see about that, whether there's distribution. Hong Kong down by about 1%. Here's an interesting one, I think, from China, though, even though it's on holiday, still in the headlines, not quite in the big headlines, but looking behind them, looking at shipping companies, and China's been unloading some Australian coal shipments. Now, not a lot, given that 35 million tonnes of Australian coal was used in 2020. Now, of course, as you know, as we've brought you on this programme before, since then, there's been an unofficial ban on Australian coal, but it looks like they've unloaded about 450,000 tonnes of it, which underscores the energy problems that China is going through at the moment. Again, that's not in big headlines. That's looking behind them slightly at shipping companies' latest figures on dry cargo. New Zealand has raised its interest rates for the first time in 7 years. The importance of this is, of course, this is one of the first developed economies to reverse the lowering of interest rates for the pandemic crisis. How that actually plays around the rest of the world, not quite sure at the moment, but that's certainly the move in New Zealand. The US and China officials are to hold high-level summit in Switzerland today. The end line of the proposal would be a virtual summit between the China and US leaders. They have had a phone call. They did have a phone call last month. It was a bit frosty, to be absolutely honest, and felt as though this might be a bit of a compromise. What they're going to talk about, who knows? I suspect probably things quite generally, but it's a step forward. So as far as US markets are concerned, basically futures in the red this morning. A bit of a turnaround Tuesday, as it happened yesterday. Evergrande's still there. Got no idea about that. Shanghai markets closed, I said, for Golden Week, and the risk to the outlet, the risks to the outlook, basically all focused on the jobless figures on Friday. The fishing row has been reignited again as far as the EU is concerned. This is France acting bilaterally against the UK. They say that, well, we talked about it earlier in the week, didn't we? The UK has only granted 12 licenses to 47 proposals from the French. The French are getting very cross about this, particularly the French Prime Minister, not the President there, but the Prime Minister, Prime Minister Jean Castex, has accused the UK of not respecting the Brexit deal on fishing, and there's no detail as to what there might be against these sort of bilateral spats. But as you know, the UK shares big defence, security, border controls, energy and trade agreements with the French. So this may put strain on those. As far as the UK is concerned, there's an interesting statistic out this morning. Private equity has actually been paying quite a premium. The most recent ones for Morrison's. They paid 63% higher for the privilege of buying Morrison's. Now the question here is really, what sort of company is going to do with it? Will private equity, because of the high debt levels in the deal, be forced to break it up? That's what the fear is at the moment. But this is symptomatic of private equity at the moment. They're looking all the way around the world, particularly American companies, and saying, what can we actually buy? Is it a bubble? I think it is. When will the bubble actually burst? Well, I think when you start to see how these purchases are unravelled by the needs of private equity to service their debt requirements. I'll leave that to people more technical than me, but I'd be looking at that kind of thing. In the UK, the narrative here is continuing. It's the last day of the Conservative Party conference. There's the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. What he will, in fact, say is that crisis, what crisis? Do you remember that one? You probably don't. James Callaghan, famous Prime Minister in the UK, coming back to a terrible, terrible winter of discontent in Britain and saying, crisis, what crisis, when the newspaper reporters were asking him what was going on. Anyway, Boris Johnson's taking a similar kind of view. What he's saying is, and again, we touched on this yesterday, that business has got drunk bank on cheap labour. Now we need to move forward to a new kind of economy for the UK. It's going to be pretty tough to do, but that's what he's actually going to say to the Tory party faithful who are gathered to hear his speech when he closes it towards lunchtime today. As far as going back to work's concerned, not more than a third of managers are not expecting a full staff return to work. Third have cut office space as well. This will have knock-on effects for all the support industries, including coffee bars and so on, remote solutions, Delta variants and COVID-19 and all the usual kind of excuses stopping people going back to work. And quite honestly, they think to themselves, why do I need to spend time on a crowded bus or train when I can sit at home and work just as hard? Well, maybe you do work just as hard. The managers don't like it too much, but there we are. Commodities, oil is really, I said that oil was an accidental tourist as far as rising natural gas prices are concerned. I still think that it is. Been coattailing natural gas higher. Business as usual for gold. Again, there won't be a great deal of movement on that until we see how the US economy plans itself after these all-important jobs figures on Friday. That's your global view. Good morning.
Right. Two great quick points. Thank you so much, Michael. Number one, we'll be going to Japan. The Prime Minister just only got in, but he might be booted out soon. A lot of people are angry. Why increase, those taxes at this point in time? So quick. It has caused shockwaves, sent shockwaves across the market in Japan. That's one. Number two, I don't still get the understanding behind the private equity firms in America buying up Morrison. Because when you look at it, you talked about the numbers. When the numbers start to come in, you will know it's a bubble. I would have thought if they wanted to buy, they should have gone for something like a Lidl or what's it called, the other German one now, Lidl or Aldi, the other German one, or Aldi, that churning big revenues. For instance, a Lidl, I think they do revenue of over 40 billion. Morrison's is less than 5 billion, and the numbers will come in heavily. And when you juxtapose that with the debt Morrison's has already. So what is really happening here? Is it because the companies are cheap and they're just buying them for a bubble?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, Aldi and Lidl are not for sale and they're private companies. I mean, that answers that. And I mean, if they had been, of course, if you start offering a huge amount of cash, then people start to take notice. But Morrison's actually distinguishes itself as it is distinctively a UK company. And I'm thinking, given the amount of debt in the deal, the only way for private equity to go forward in this is to break it up, because it breaks quite neatly into four particular parts, including its petrol stations. But why would you be investing in groceries? I was actually asking my wife this question because she's a financial journalist too. She said people always need to eat. I suppose that's pretty sensible. I'd be pretty wary about the grocery sector. I think there are big changes to come, but there we are. A family disagreement about that. As far as, but the story really is that private equity, it's not just about Morrison's. The reason I brought it to your attention is that it looks like overall they are paying premiums. There's a lot of money on the sidelines looking for something to do. And these people start tapping their fingers on their desks and start thinking, what are we going to do about this? And what they're doing is they're snapping up what they see as undervalued companies. Sure, they are. Maybe they're undervalued. Maybe there's a bubble. Maybe there's a lot of money floating around. I think there is. I think that's really the question. My concern is, when do we see the bubble begin to burst? Well, where does the air start to come out of the balloon? Because the bubble bursts and that's it. When does the air start to come out of the balloon? I would suggest when we see private equity companies actually being forced to break up what they bought to assuage their debt demands. As far as Japan's concerned, yeah, I mean, I suppose what he's doing is he's getting the bad news out of the way pretty quickly. I mean, it's a moribund economy. We know that. We know it's the oldest society in the world because of its demographic basis. So it needs not only to spend money on infrastructure, which he's going to do, but he's got to raise taxes as well. There's no two ways about that. I'm surprised that the equity markets are so surprised themselves by this. It's just all so obvious. Well,
I mean, the Chinese economy is going through some form of crisis, power outages, supply chain crisis in the real estate sector. And the big question is this: how common is Xi Jinping's common prosperity agenda? And to what extent will the crisis within the Chinese economy affect global economic growth, considering the fact that China accounts for about 15% share of global economy. And now the IMF and the World Bank, they are reviewing their projections in terms of growth for this year and next year. And as for Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he's been saying that we have the guts to fix Britain. Does he really have the guts? Can he fix it? Will he be able to fix it? And what do you think of those proposals, particularly his position with regard to, restrictions on European immigration and employment and the implications for more wages for the British average worker?
So what's happening as far as the UK is concerned? Let's do that one first. I've just been listening to Baron Wolfson, the head of Next, Simon Wolfson, the head of Next, who's been talking about this fight that Boris Johnson is having with business, saying that we're not going to go down the road of starting to lift immigration controls again and have you lot to business, getting drunk on cheap labour and the rest of it. What he's saying is he wants to push forward with the economy actually working towards a higher skilled economy, taking advantage of AI and all the rest of it, which I think is perfectly fine. I mean, that's what it has to do. Guts, well, I mean, that's politicians' talk, isn't it? What Baron Wolfson, Simon Wolfson was saying this morning, and he's head of a considerable firm and he's a government advisor as well, as far as business is concerned. Yeah, that's all fine. But what we need to do is work out a way of paying workers who come to the UK the same as their UK counterparts, not low wages. In other words, the drunkenness on low wages has got to stop. Here you have business agreeing with this. What they're saying is we will do that because illegally somebody has to be paid. You do two people doing the same job, one from not from the UK, one from the UK. They both have to be paid the same. And if the immigrant labour is lower, officially this is, not unofficially, who knows what happens unofficially. Officially, it has to be exactly the same. What Wolfson is saying in his interview this morning is that I will do that, but you're going to have to pay more in the end for the sort of cost, and we'll all have to pay. We'll have to pay more. The era of cheap goods coming in is very, very difficult indeed, which brings us neatly onto China. It's the old thing with China. If you want not to pay for things, then you keep China going. If you need to pay for things, then you on-source your supply chains, you onshore your supply chains rather, and China will have to live to accommodate with the rest of the world, which it's not doing at the moment. However, that's why I brought to your attention the fact that it looks like they're unloading, it's not a big amount, only 400,000 tons of Australian coal, because they're suffering a big energy crisis. Now, you can do what you like in a command economy like you have in China, but once the people who have had this touch of capitalism and have had a touch of choice actually see their energy prices and see these outages continuing, as they used to be quite common 10 years ago, they've got less and less common. Now they're coming back. They're not going to be very happy. That's something for the Chinese to have to deal with. Those are the kind of internal pressures that I would be looking at as far as China's concerned. They have an energy crisis just like the rest of the world does. And no man is an island. We've said this many times before, and it's happening in China as well.
I wanted to talk about a day of reckoning for some of the world's biggest companies. We saw the Facebook whistleblower, Frances Haugen, I don't know how to pronounce her name, talking about how Facebook harms children, stokes division, and is bad for democracy. And then Tesla having to pay out $137 million to a former employee who was subjected to appalling racism in the workplace. But my question for you, do you think that this so-called reckoning actually affects these companies' policies and their bottom line, where it really counts?
I do. I think that what we're seeing is, I mean, this is all flabby, green, woke talk, but it's about stakeholders. And I think certainly that there is a big feeling within the United States, particularly about Facebook. A lot of Democrats are saying what these revelations that are coming out now, and we sort of knew about them, but the revelations about the algorithms and the profit before safety and all the rest of it by Frances Haugen, who is the person, the whistleblower here, could be Facebook's big tobacco moment. As these companies get bigger and bigger, they attract more and more criticism, they attract more and more controversy, and that's what's happening with Facebook. I'm certain it'll be the same with Tesla as well. You know, they're looking at, I was seeing one of my commentators this morning joking on the phone to me about, Bitcoin's up again, but we haven't had any tweets from Elon Musk, something wrong somewhere, perhaps we shouldn't be buying Bitcoin, perhaps we don't take notice of it. All this kind of ludicrousness about social media and tweeting and the rest of it. These companies are just too big, and they will face their big tobacco moment. As sure as eggs is eggs, they will be facing that. Maybe not tomorrow, but it's happening.
All right, Michael, I'm woke, I'm proud. Work is the new cool. Just saying. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you, Michael, this morning for updates on COVID-19 pandemic. And this one is here and she joins us. And this one, great to have you.
Thank you very much, Rufai. Good morning. Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Dr. Bati.
Good morning, Adesua. Thanks for your test yesterday. I hope I sound better this morning.
Yes, you do sound better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was a bit tired yesterday.
Was that a bribery text to evade implications?
Adeswa, do ignore
No,
them.
we don't bribe.
Stay
No,
strong,
we don't bribe.
Adeswa.
No, we don't bribe.
To evade implications? This one, go ahead.
Immunity covers me. As long as Tundu is on that set, I know I'm covered. But let's look at the latest statistics. Yes, thank you, Tundu. Let's look at the statistics from the COVID-19 pandemic. Currently, the death toll from the United States is higher than the total death recorded ever last year in the US. That gives you a picture of how many people have died from the virus in the United States. But it's not just the United States. Over 700,000 people have died in the US. But globally, 4.8 million, at least 4.8 million people have died from the virus. However, the country with the highest number of deaths compared to its population is not the US, even though they have the highest numbers. The country with the most deaths compared to its population is Peru. Statistics show that Peru, with its population, currently has about 604 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants, and that's high. Meanwhile, there have been 235.8 million infections globally. Over 6.3 billion doses have been administered so far, according to the Johns Hopkins University latest tally. Meanwhile, here in Nigeria, no data has been reported in the last 24 hours by the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. This is somewhat unusual, I must say, to have no data posted by the agency during the week. Sometimes the weekends are usually slow, so we are likely not to get data maybe on Mondays or during the weekends. But to have, on a day like this, not have data, it is a bit unusual, I must say again, and it is not clear what is responsible for that, why there's been an absence of data from the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory as at this morning. But as soon as we have that data, you will find it on their websites and across bulletins. And of course, I'll be bringing you updates by this time tomorrow on the COVID-19 update. Meanwhile, we got the latest vaccination updates from the PHCDA, beg your pardon for that. Yes, the Nigerian Primary Healthcare Development Agency, which is responsible for vaccinations in Nigeria. Let me tell you quickly some of the things we learned yesterday. We heard that Nigeria has received additional vaccine doses. Vaccine push, Nigeria is getting those needed life-saving vaccine doses. This time around, a little bit over 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca came in from France through the COVAX facility, according to Dr. Faisal Schweib. He also says that Nigeria will get about 3.5 million doses of vaccines in the next 2 weeks. To be specific, he says Moderna vaccines, I think, or Pfizer vaccines rather, will be coming into the country in the next 2 weeks. So we'll wait to see when that comes in. I'll bring you the update as well. But I want you to listen to Dr. Faisal Schweib, to what he says regarding the controversial lists of recognized vaccines, recognized countries administering vaccines by the UK, the list of 50 countries released by the UK government, and why Nigeria is not on that list. Listen to him.
Nigeria's status has not changed. Nigeria is not among the red-listed countries that need to mandatorily quarantine for 14 days in a supervised UK facility. The statement released by the UK government is consistent with the press statement released last week that Nigerians will continue to isolate upon arrival to the United Kingdom. This is similar to our requirement that travelers from the UK should isolate for 7 days when they arrive in Nigeria.
Okay, so there you have Dr. Faisal Shuaib yesterday, and Rufai Tundun, Dr. Batu, we talked about this. It is not new, but a bit of clarification there. So what he's saying is Nigerians will not be subjected to mandatory quarantine. However, they still need to quarantine when they get to the UK. And as a policy of reciprocity, those coming from the UK will also have to do the same thing when they get to Nigeria. However, the country recognizes COVID Shield, which has been administered in Nigeria. I hope that that clarifies some of the controversies we've had in recent days. But no, finally, let's go somewhere else. We'll get to that, Rufai, in a bit. Let's talk about more vaccine stories that have emerged in the last 24 hours. Russia is hoping that the WHO would authorize its Sputnik V for authorization use across the world. That would be a boost for it. However, the WHO gave some clarifications yesterday. It says that it's still reviewing data about Russia's Sputnik V vaccine, clarifying that no decision is imminent. The clarification comes after Russian Health Minister Mikhail said the administrative issues were among the main holdups in the WHO's decision-making process. And then yesterday, the Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine company said it had submitted data to the US FDA for emergency use authorization for a booster shot in the US. It says the submission included data from a large late-stage trial that found that a booster shot of its vaccines, listen to this, given 56 days after the primary dose, actually provides 94% protection against symptomatic COVID-19 in the US, and then 100% protection against severe diseases at least 14 days after the booster shot has been given. That's the Johnson & Johnson. But yesterday as well, we had AstraZeneca also announcing that it had submitted requests for emergency approval from the US regulators for an antibody cocktail. This is a protective pill against COVID-19. You can call it a major step in the global fight to combat the virus.
I'm so excited about that because that is something I have constantly always pushed for. Yes, not everybody can get the vaccine now. We want people to get the vaccine. But what if they catch COVID, or what can prevent them? And I'm happy that they put this antibody cocktail in a drug. So it's good. The other question is, how available is it for people? So take, for instance, people in Nigeria. Because you see, we have cases of, people getting saved from COVID using monococcal cocktail. People like Donald Trump. I think it was the Eli Lilly drug that saved his, it was, what was Regeneron. It was an antibody cocktail that saved Donald Trump's life. So if you put something like this in the pill, then how do you put it around the world in such a way that big pharma doesn't get to fleece people off? That's the very important question. It's good they've discovered it. I think Merck is making it. It's a great one, but availability is another issue. Because people are coming down with COVID and dying every day before the vaccine circulates around, so at least people can have a fighting chance with a pill that is quick and straight to the point. Secondly, Adesua, please, I think it was Albert Einstein that said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you yourself don't understand it. I'm a 6-year-old here. I don't get that explanation. What is it that you won't get mandatory quarantine and your vaccine is recognized, but you will still have to do those tests and stay at home? I don't get the whole gamut. I thought once I took my vaccine, then I should be able to go to the UK and play just like somebody that comes from France that took the same vaccine I took, will just enter the UK and don't need any quarantine. I think the vaccine passport should save me for all of that. So I don't get it. I don't understand. Well,
the UK authorities are very specific in reviewing the list of 54 countries to about 9. And the main point that was made is that vaccines that have been, on approval lists in Europe, the United States and the UK will be accepted. And that's the basis of the controversy with India. With India embarking on reciprocal action against travelers arriving in India from the United Kingdom. But with regard to Nigeria, I think the big takeaway is Dr. Faisal Shuaib making it clear that the Nigerian authorities are engaging the United Kingdom. But for now, Nigeria was on the amber list. Now that has been categorized into red and green, what is just required for Nigerians is to isolate upon arrival in the United Kingdom. However, The UK authorities have also made it clear that by the end of the month, on a bi-weekly basis, there will be a review of that list. It may well be that in the course of that review, South Africa now being considered, that perhaps Nigeria and maybe India and some other countries will get onto that list. But the truth of the matter is about several strategic sovereign interest. What we can rely on is that there is that conversation between the UK and Nigeria. But Dr. Faisal Shaibu made other points. 4.956 million people in Nigeria have already taken one dose. But he also said more doses will arrive. And some of these doses, in one of those paragraphs in his speech, he talked about, look, for the moment, for now, those vaccines are administered at government-managed centers. But that in due course, private health centers that have the necessary facilities and that can meet the standards, will be allowed to also start administering the vaccine as a way of, ramping up the vaccination process in Nigeria. And he advised people to take the second dose, take advantage of the available vaccines. And I think that, after a pattern, the MPHCDA has been very consistent in giving us these updates. Although in paragraph 2, I saw Dr. Shaibu there trying to praise President Buhari, especially for leadership and vision. Maybe some people will disagree with that. As for boosters, booster shots being requested by J&J, the only pharmaceutical company that has received approval in the United States is Pfizer. But Moderna is also applying. Pfizer and J&J, they are also submitting applications for booster vaccines for even persons from 18-year-olds and above. Pfizer got approval for 65-year-olds and above. In Israel, in fact, if you don't get the booster vaccine, then you won't be allowed into indoor locations. However, the thing to note is that scientists are divided on the question of booster vaccines. The WHO, for example, is saying you can't go and give, a third shot to people in privileged countries, when in other parts of the world, in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, just about 1% of the population has had access to vaccines. So that raises issue about vaccine equity, about solidarity, global solidarity and cooperation, and the need for the privileged countries to provide necessary support for underprivileged parts of the world.
Well, the point about UK's policies is that in a world where those who believe that a COVID vaccine makes you connected to the internet, those people walk among us in this world. When you now have this kind of different levels, one rule for this lot and another rule for that lot, it only encourages that kind of backward thinking. And even if it's in phases, even if the phases are separated just by a few hours, those phases should not happen at all. All they're doing is encouraging vaccine hesitancy. And I can actually see an argument. I was talking to somebody with a medical background that was saying that this points to the fact that the COVID shield that we take here in Nigeria is somehow defective. I mean, that's somebody with a medical background. What about a layperson? And also, this story that you raised with Sputnik 5, the Russian jab, which was approved in Russia in August of last year, still has not been approved by the WHO. So we do all make a huge song and dance about the fact that Nigeria has not been able to produce their own vaccine. But if at all we had, this is what we would have to go through. WHO would take a really long time giving us approval. Other countries would not recognize our vaccine. So really, there is a long way to go. Vaccine equity is showing all kinds of fault lines that really should not exist.
And in the end, some people say it's bad to be woke.
I totally agree.
It's fine. Thank you so much, Adeso. I really appreciate it.